We live in the age of information. It's what they've labeled it. At least, the last 75 years-ish, maybe give or take, somewhere, around the 50s. The trend, they attribute it to some different things, but it's essentially that we moved away, kind of our economy began to drift away from being focused solely on an industrial focus to more of an information technology. Like it became all about information, dissemination of information, the consumption of information, and more than ever before in human history, we are now aware of what is going on, not just in the people's lives right around us, but in potentially the people's lives all over the planet. Like we can know and understand and see, and because of that, it's caused, it's a good thing. I mean, I'm not here to say, the age of information is like a bad thing. I'm pretty thankful for it. I'm putting this back here, Jay. Well, if it was a piece of paper, I wouldn't mind stepping on it, but it's not a piece of paper. We have access to so much, and it's a great thing, but at the same time, we're so aware of what's going on in other people's lives, we see and we begin to compare ourselves. And so we see what others do have and what others don't have, and we see what we do have and what we don't have. And we begin, and this is what begins to happen. The more aware, that's not working. So could somebody run the little beep beep? My little clicker ain't working. All right, now let me try it. Nope, still not working. We're in the age of information where technology doesn't work. So my daughter's coming to rescue me. The more aware we are of what we don't have, the more dissatisfied, isn't this true? The more dissatisfied we become with who we are, where we are, and what we have. It's just the way we're wired, the way that we're geared. Is it not working at all? Ooh. Hey, yay. The more aware we become, and we are aware. I mean, we see it all the time. The more aware we are of what we have, of what we don't have, the greater our dissatisfaction with what we do have, with who we are, with where we are in life. It's just frustrating. We can't help it. We get dissatisfied. It's an appetite, and yet we long for it. We desire for more. We desire for better. We look around at other people's lives and we think, their life is kind of better than mine. And we don't mean to, but we just kind of do. Their life is a little bit better than mine. They have what I want. They've got the kind of life that I want. They're better. They're faster. They're smarter. They've got better cars. They've got a better house. They've got a better job. They've just got a better life. And we get dissatisfied, and we get unhappy, and we get a little depressed. I mean, this is kind of the process here. And when that begins to happen, it impacts our relationships with other people. Is that not true? And so we've been talking about, and we're going to add to this list today, but we've been talking about the heart and things that get lodged in our heart, because ultimately this is a heart issue. This is not just about money and possessions and your stuff. This is a heart issue, and we've been talking about the heart. So over the last couple of weeks, we've talked about pride and we've talked about greed, which are super exciting, I know. So we're just going to add to the list while I've got us all down and we're just kicking ourselves, okay? Today we're going to talk about envy, okay? And this is different. This isn't greed, this is envy. Greed is just trying to accumulate all you can. Envy is just desiring what other people have. And here's the thing. Envy, I know, it's not a word that we use. It's kind of a Bible-y word, more or less. I mean, it's kind of what we use, but we don't. Instead, and this is more what we mean when we say this, but we kind of substitute it. And it's not necessarily wrong, I don't think, but we substitute it with what word? Being jealous, like jealousy. Like it's just, I'm so jealous, of what they have, or I'm so jealous, and that's kind of the way we couch it. But here's kind of some of the nuance, some of the difference here. Jealousy really has more to do with our relationships than anything else. When you're jealous, this is really more jealous. Jealous is when you've already got something and you're scared of losing it. Fear of losing something or someone we already have. I mean, you think about this, when it comes to our relationships with other people, it's when you got a girlfriend and your girlfriend starts chatting with another guy and it's like you're jealous. That's jealousy. When you've got your best friend forever finds another best friend forever, you're jealous. That makes you jealous, and that's jealousy. So that's kind of specific. That's very relational. But we're talking about a word that is much broader in scope. And it really kind of deals with everything. All of that and kind of the in-between is really what envy is. Envy looks like this. It's wanting what other people have, including but not limited to money, possessions, personal qualities, characteristics, achievements. And I mean, we could add to this list. That's envy. It's what you don't currently possess, that you look around and you think you need to because your life isn't as good. And this starts, the thing is, we see this, and this starts like with kids. Like when a kid, and if you have kids, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You know, they were totally content playing on the floor with that toy until their brother or their sister or their buddy got out another toy to play with. And now they envy that toy. That's the one they got to have. And then what happens? They get that toy and it's not enough. The toy, it never satisfies. And this isn't a kid thing. This is an everybody thing. This is an all skate. This is all of us. This is every human being. And this carries right on into adulthood. But it's not just, so what I need you to hear, it's not just money and possessions. That's not just what we're talking about here. Oh, your stuff and your car and your house, that's part of it. This is really much broader than that, and it has to do with your heart. It's literally just all of life, and we get dissatisfied and discontent, and when that begins to happen and some of that unhappiness settles in and we're just constantly dissatisfied and discontent with really all of life, even the more we have, the more we want, because that's what an appetite does, and as we accumulate more and we get less and less satisfied with our lives, and we get a little depressed, it impacts relationships. It hurts people. It will impact every part of your life, and that's why this is a big deal. It's why we're talking about this today, because it matters. Envy cannot find its way in our hearts. Now, here's the thing. It's impossible just to avoid completely being aware of what you do or don't have, okay? Like, you're just going to see it. I mean, you're in a room today with people at all different stages of life and different, economic status and with different types of jobs, different levels of education. We all sense that. And so you're going to see it. You're going to be aware of it. But how can we avoid envy? Because we start wanting more and we start longing for more, and then we accumulate more and we get more, and then we're still dissatisfied. And then we get to the place where we realize that there's always somebody. This is the problem. And when it becomes, envy really becomes a problem, when it becomes to take a root in our heart, because there's always somebody somewhere who has more, who's better, who's faster, who's prettier, who's smarter, who's richer, who's thinner, more educated-er, athletic-er. I know those aren't words, honey. It's because I'm okay with other people being smarter than me, and I'm totally okay with that. There's always an and so we find ourselves, no matter how much we add to our lives, we're always in an endless cycle of pursuing We want more. We want better. We want to be prettier. We want better clothes. And so we go out, and it's an endless pursuit, and we buy more, and we, add to our wardrobe, and we look around at other people's lives, and we think, well, their husband, I've just gotten to a stage in life, and my husband just doesn't make enough. I just don't think they make enough. Like, our lives aren't good enough, or his husband treats her so well, or he loves her like that, and then, for husbands, it's like, well, his wife was prettier. She's more attractive than my wife. Or, I look around, it's like, oh, well, she keeps house better, and she cooks and cleans, and she does all those things more than my wife. Or it's, getting our kids involved constantly and more at like a very early age, like elementary school. And like we've got them in every sport and activity, and we're pushing them and pressing them. And, we want them to do more because, well, we didn't have those opportunities, and we want to, give them these opportunities, and we want them to be the best. And if they don't start now, they're not going to be the best, and I want them to be the best. That's all. And so we, add to their already, overactive schedules, and it's crazy. And we, and then we, and to what end? I don't know. For what? Like, ultimately, really? And then we get a different haircut, and we buy different clothes, and we buy cars and houses that we really can't afford, and we are constantly adding to the only to find that we're constantly dissatisfied with more, because that's what an appetite does. An appetite is never fully and completely satisfied. It's the nature of appetite. You can satisfy it for a moment, but the next time you want a little bit more, That's the danger of having cheat days, Am I right? It's like, I love a cheat day, but I'm just saying, like, how it is. So you had that cheat day, you want another one real soon. So what do we do about this? Like, if envy is something so prevalent, like if it's constantly in our face that we're so aware, then what do we do about it? And I recognize that there may be some of us in here that kind of think, what's really the big deal? Because it's like envy. It's like, is it really envy, or am I just I just want to be better. I just want to improve. I just want things to improve. Why is it such a big deal that I want, nicer things than I have now? That I want to improve and to succeed, to be successful, to be the best that I can be. And here's the thing. There's nothing wrong with that, unless you're never satisfied. You see, it turns to envy, and it's subtle, and it embeds itself in our heart, and it will damage, sometimes destroy relationships, and really all kinds of aspects of your life. It has the potential to do that because it gets in your heart. So here's the thing. I want to show you some scripture in James chapter 3, if you want to turn there. And he really is explaining why this is so prevalent and why it's such a big deal, why it really is a big deal. And then I want to look at trying to figure out what we can do about it. Is there really something we can do, knowing that we are in the age of information and there's no avoiding knowing what's going on in other people's lives. And so James chapter 3, and here's a couple of things I need you to know. James chapter 3, we're going to look at just a couple of verses here. First, you need to consider this, that James is writing. Who is he writing to? Who is his audience? He's writing to Jewish Christians, okay? These are people who are Jewish, but they have decided to believe that Jesus really is the Messiah, okay? So that's number one. That's his audience. He's talking to people that really are like you and me. We've decided to place our faith in Jesus, but he's also, right, it's like, well, why would you have to write this to Christians? Well, because this is something we deal with too. So something we always potentially struggle with. But also, just consider before we read these verses that James is the brother of Jesus. Okay? Now, let me read these words. James chapter 3, verse 13. Who's wise and understanding among you? Let them show it. Here's what a wise person does when it's godly wisdom, somebody that really does have understanding. Here's how they let the world know it. By showing it. Show it by their good life, by deeds done in the humility that comes from wisdom. Godly wisdom is marked by humility, and it doesn't have to advertise itself or self-promote. That's godly wisdom. In other words, if you think you've kind of got it together, it's like, I know I've got stuff together, I've got it together. I kind of know I've got how the world works. I get it, Pastor, but you just don't know. Like in my world, like things are a little different. It's a little more cutthroat, It's just kind of me versus other people, and I'm in sales, and like I gotta kind of work my way. It's just the nature of it, and you're constantly kind of being compared, and so you can't help but compare. It's like, well, I only sold this much, but they're selling this much, and they got the car, and they won this award, and they got, I want to do that, and that just pushes me, Pastor. And it's like, great. You should never have to talk about it then. If you really do have the kind of wisdom and understanding that James is referring to here, then show it just by the way that you live your life. By serving others in humility, because that's what humility is. Humility is to make less of yourself while making more of others. Thinking of yourself less, not thinking less of yourself. It just means I'm going to put myself second to the needs and the wants of other people. That's humility. And it comes from wisdom. That's godly wisdom. On the other hand, He gives the reverse, and this is what he says. And pay attention. Think about this. But if you harbor, I like that analogy. We've been using the word when something gets lodged in your heart, this is just kind of his version of it. When you allow or when you harbor, when you give safe passage, when you allow something to kind of dock safely in your harbor, the harbor of your heart, and it's bitter envy and selfish ambition, then don't boast about it or you deny the truth. Man, you better not boast about the stuff that's going on in your heart, because that's what envy does. Envy wants to accelerate itself. It wants to self-promote. It's got selfish ambition. It looks good on the outside. I'm just being motivated. I'm just being successful. I just want my kids to succeed. I just, feel like I can, well, what's wrong with having nice things? What's wrong with it? But ultimately, it's not just envy, it's bitter envy, because bitterness is really the result of this. Like when you get envious, it's kind of bitter. It's not just that you want to succeed, you kind of want others to fail. I know, nobody's going to say that. I get it. Who would say that? But we kind of bask in the glory of somebody else's misery sometimes, especially people we don't like, people that have hurt us, they've caused us pain. Oh, it just feels so good. I would never say it. Oh, I'm so sorry. I've got a prayer request to share with you guys. Can you believe it? They got divorced. We need to be praying for them. Is it an honest care for the person, or is it bitter envy? And we're going to get to how we can figure that out real quick, because it's something that's gotten lodged in our heart. Think about this verse, though, in terms of James being the brother of Jesus. I mean, who more than James was going to struggle with some envy when you're the brother of Jesus? Your brother can walk on water. He's a fantastic communicator. He's got incredible charisma. All these people are attracted to him. He's got all these people that are following him, and he walks on water, and he can make water into wine. Like this everybody loves this guy. And don't you know, here's what's interesting. I mean, this is James writing these words, but it's after the fact. While Jesus was alive, James did not believe that his brother was the Messiah. I wonder if envy had anything to do with it. You're my brother, dude. I don't care if people are saying you're walking on water. It was probably just shallow. You were probably just on one of our slalom skis. That's all that was going on. Are you kidding me? You're not the Messiah. He didn't believe it until Jesus was crucified, and then people saw him walking around. And he was resurrected. And then it was like, I wonder if there was a point, and I bet there was, a point in James' life when he was like, he regretted the envy that he had allowed into his heart, because it almost separated him completely from, I bet they didn't get along real well. When Jesus said things like, I'm going to be rejected in my own home, in my own hometown, people will reject me and will not believe in me. I think it's because we just know him too well. Like that can't be who he says he is, because like we watched him grow up. Dude, you're not the Messiah. You're not the one. There was some envy there, some selfish ambition. I want to be like that. And here's the way he describes that kind of wisdom, because this is kind of a different kind of wisdom. Such wisdom, it's almost like air quotes. Such wisdom does not come down from heaven. Watch this. But is earthly, unspiritual, and demonic. The kind of wisdom that has to talk about itself and compare itself to other people, and to see what they've got and to want what they've got and to try to, jockey themselves into the right position, that is earthly, unspiritual, and of the devil. It's gross. And you know what it leads to? Where you have envy and selfish ambition, here's the result. This is why this is so dangerous. There you find disorder, chaos, disunity, and every evil practice. Like he was like, I don't even want to come up with a list. Like every evil practice. Because in Socrates, I read this quote. I didn't write it down, but it's something along the lines of envy is like the close cousin of pride. Like they're kind of connected because it's arrogance, it's pride, is it not? That, oh, I want what they've got. I want to be better than they've got. Oh, look, I compare myself to that person. They're not very pretty. They're not thin. I'm looking at myself in the mirror like I'm in good, like compared to them, I'm in great shape. Like I'm doing good. When, other people my age, like when we're doing that, that is a version of envy that is defeating you because it's gotten stuck in your heart. And so what do we do? Can I just ask, like, if this is the big deal, that's what I want to say. James is saying, like, this is a big deal. But here's, like, what do we do about that? Like, I think there is a definition here that's going to help us with the remainder of this talk, kind of help us know what to do with this. And I would say maybe this is James' version of what envy, of how you can define envy. I've kind of given you my version of it, but here's what envy is based on what he's telling us. You're resenting God's goodness in other people's lives while ignoring God's goodness in your life. That's envy. When you are looking around and you're seeing what other people have or don't have, and you're comparing yourself to it, and it causes you to want it or to desire it or to pursue it or to go after it. It's like not just making you better. That's not what it is. Like you want it, and in fact, you want them to not have it. Then you are essentially resenting what God has maybe done in their life, and you're ignoring what God has done in your life. You can't have it both ways. And if that's the case, then it could be that envy has settled in and you've allowed it to find safe harbor in your heart. So here's how I think we deal with this. I think we deal with this by figuring out what is really the root of envy, of what produces it, I should say. Not necessarily the root. I think the root's probably pride. I'm talking about like what caused, like how does it sneak up on us? How does it get there in the first place? How does it become something that we have to deal with? Because, what do we do after all? We're aware. There's nothing we can do about that. Matter of fact, you could close your eyes and close your ears for the remainder of your days, and you would still potentially struggle with envy. Because now you just are wondering, well, I wish I could see and hear like everybody else does, Well, they got to see and hear, but I don't. Here I am. We're always struggling with it. So it's not enough to just say, well, I'm going to turn off social media. I'm not going to look anymore. I'm not going to see other people's highlight reels. I'm not going to have any friends, that do wonderful things. I'm going to make sure that I'm just, friends with people who have less than I do. Then I'm good. Like, that's not helping. Envy's still there because the leading cause of envy is the never-ending cycle of comparison. It's not just an awareness. You're never going to not be aware. That's not the problem. The problem is comparison. Taking it a step further, saying, it's not just what they have and I'm aware of it. Instead, it's like, I see the difference here, and I'm bothered by it. Why is God blessing them and not me? Why do I only have this much when they've got that much? Why? And so what do we do about that? How do we break this cycle? And so I want to jump over to Matthew chapter 20. There's a parable here that Jesus tells, and we're basically just going to read straight through this, so hang with me. But it's just a story that Jesus made up, and actually he's talking in terms of what he's trying to describe to people through a story. I'm trying to describe to people what the kingdom of heaven is like. So he says the kingdom of heaven, and throughout Matthew's gospel, you see that over and over again. And so this story is no different. It's, Jesus is saying, here's what, I can't just explain it to you. Let me tell you a story. This is what the kingdom of heaven is like. And so if you're wondering, about your rank or your position, your status when it comes to God's kingdom, we better be real careful and pay attention to the way that Jesus tells this story. So listen to what he says, and I think we can make the application here to everything to do with comparison. He says, for the kingdom of heaven is like. It's like a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire some workers for his vineyard. He needed some guys to work. So he's driving down the street. He grabs a few guys. It's early in the morning. He agreed to pay them. They got a little verbal contract. They all agreed that you're going to make a denarius, which was a standard day's wage. And so they agreed to that for the day and sent them into his vineyard. Check this out. About 9 in the morning, okay, so a few hours later, he went out and he saw some others standing in the marketplace doing nothing. And so he told them, you also go out and work in my vineyard and I'll pay you whatever is right. He doesn't say a denarius. He just says, I'll just pay you whatever's right. And then he says, so they went, and then he went out again at noon a few hours later, and about 3 in the afternoon, he does it again. And he gets people and he does the same thing. Well, about 5 in the afternoon, he went out again. Now it's like the end of the day. But he's still got some compassion. He's still, like, things are nearing the end. But he still wants to, he still is generous. He still wants to be able to provide some opportunity for people who need it. He found still others standing around. He said to them, why have you been standing here all day long doing nothing? And they're, well, because no one has hired us. Like, we want to work, but nobody's hired us. And he said to them, then you also go and work in my vineyard. Now, here's the crazy part. Because we're all about fair, We grow up and we tell our kids, life isn't fair, but we kind of want things fair. Like, if we're being honest. Well, when evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to his foreman, call the workers, pay them their wages, beginning with the last ones hired and going on to the first. So he starts with the last and goes on to the first. So they've only been there an hour or so. The workers who were hired about 5 in the afternoon came, and each received a denarius, a full day's wage. So when those came who were hired first, what did they do? They compared their effort and their work for the day with the effort and the work of these people who had been there for a short while. And so they expected their wage to be different than what was initially agreed upon. They expected to receive more. Now, they still knew they were going to receive, so they were good with that. Like, they were going to receive, they were going to get something. You see what I'm saying? It's not like they were going to walk away empty-handed. Oh, well, I've run out of money. I don't have any. No, they were going to receive, but they expected to receive more. Because compared to these guys, we've done more work, so we deserve more. But each one of them also received 1 day's wage. Ooh. When they received it, they got it, like this was theirs, they began to grumble against the landowner. They began to get irritated. They began to compare. They began to look around and go, they got more than me. Why did they get so much? I thought, since they got that for having worked an hour and I've been here all day, like I deserve more. And yet, listen to Jesus' response. These who were, this was their argument. These who were hired last worked only 1 hour, they said, and you've made them equal. Pfft. We're not equal. I've compared it. This isn't apples to apples. This is a short little bit of work with a lot of work, and it just doesn't add up. It's not the same. And so they're not equal to us, but you've made us equal, who have been born, and we've borne the burden of the work in the heat of the day. And listen to the response that Jesus has. He answered one of them, I am not being unfair to you. I'm not being unfair to you, friend. Didn't you agree to work for a denarius? Take your pay and go. I want to give the one who was hired last the same as I gave you. It's what I want to do. Don't I have the right to do what I want with my own money? Or are you envious because I'm generous. Here's the thing. Watch this. Had nobody else been hired that day, would they have felt bad about receiving a denarius when that's what they agreed on? No. So what changed? It wasn't just the fact that other people began to work and to work less hours for the same pay. It's that they compared themselves to them. They made the comparison and saw the inequality and assumed they would receive more, even though they received, even though they had gotten a portion, even though they had gotten exactly what God had promised them. Forget about it being money. Consider it being your characteristics or your wealth or your influence, your friend group, your station in life, your season in life, what your family looks like, your family dynamics of how you were raised, and all of those things that feel like a burden and feel like baggage sometimes. Well, it's not what other people had. It's not what they had. And yet, and so we lose sight. We're comparing it to other people, and so we don't even notice the fact that we've received something from our Heavenly Father. You see the difference? That's what comparison does. Because we're comparing, and it's like, well, they got this, and I got this, and I didn't get as much, and well, they got as much. Well, I worked more, and so I should have gotten, they got this, and so I should have gotten more. And we become dissatisfied, and we grumble, and we complain, and we want more. And it wrecks and ruins relationships. That's the real danger, does it not? The grass is greener on the other side when we're comparing. And we forget that there's poop in their yard just like in our yard. You know what I'm saying? You just can't see it from your side of the fence. But what if we just paid attention to the yard that we do have and we take care of it? So how do we defeat this? Like if comparison is what produces the envy in us, how do we avoid that? And I don't know that it's like we're human and we broken people, and so, but I don't want us making excuses, okay? Let's don't make excuses today of why this doesn't apply to you, or you just don't know my situation, or that. Can we pause that line of thought for just a minute? And I want you to consider for just a second what this represents for you and for me. You have a certain amount of time that you've been given. You've got your time. You've got your network of friends and relationships. You've got your family, your own family dynamics and kind of how you were raised and what you've got your family, whatever that looks like. Your education and your career that you have. You've got your money and possessions. I know you don't think it's a lot, but it doesn't matter. You've got something. You're here today. You're not naked. You probably drove. Money and possessions. You've got some level of talent. Maybe it's not what somebody else has, but you have some talent, some gifts that God has given you. You've got your health. There's some semblance of health, wherever it is, whatever stage of life you're in, and a million other things. And you know what this represents? This is your story. This is what you have. This is what God has given to you and blessed you with and placed into your care. You have been entrusted with your story, this framework. What if we, instead of taking our story and comparing it to somebody else's story, we simply looked for a way to leverage our story for the sake of somebody else's? That is godly wisdom. And living a good life, the way that James describes it, with deeds done through the humility that comes from wisdom. And it avoids the temptation to constantly compare ourselves to other people. Instead, we're saying, this is what God has gifted me with, this is what He has blessed me with, and I'm going to do something with it. I know there's a million little sidebar conversations and lots of scenarios and what ifs and what about this and what about that, but let's just back up for a minute and just start here for a second and say, what if this is what you've been given, you see it, You're okay with it. You're satisfied with it. It doesn't mean you don't work to change it, make it better, improve it, but for the sake of others. Otherwise, it's selfish ambition, is it not? And we don't want that. We don't want to allow that to seep in and get into our heart. And so what do we do? So if this is our story, how do we actually do, and I think there's some practicality here based on James' kind of definition of what envy really looks like, because I want to avoid it as much as you. I know that we don't want to feel this way. We don't want this to get stuck in our heart. We don't want to damage relationships. But how do we really do this? How do we, avoid this earthly, unspiritual, demonic, way of thinking? How do we avoid that? Because it's selfish sin is what it boils down to, and I don't want to experience that. So what do we do? How do we guard our heart against envy? And this is super simple, and not to oversimplify, but it's also very practical. You can actually practice this. You ready for this? This is a do. This is something to do. Begin to practice. You ready for this? You want to start guarding your heart? It's not enough to say, well, I'm just going to avoid, I'm not going to know, I'm not going to be aware, I'm just going to go, that's not what. How can we guard our heart? Instead of resenting God's goodness in others' lives, say this one with me. Celebrate it. Oh, no. I said that. Yes, I did. And I get it. It's like, but you don't know what has happened. You don't know what they did to me. You don't know how they've hurt me. You don't know, they're just one-upping me. And if I'm out there, celebrating, it won't even be real. It won't even be real. So, start there until it gets real. Celebrate others' success. Celebrate it, out loud. Don't just, you ready for this? Your willingness or unwillingness to do this will speak volumes about whether or not envy has made its way into your heart. I ain't doing that. Well, envy may be a problem for you, and it will continue to be. And it will cause problems. It will hurt relationships, and it will hurt you. Because it's bitterness, it's yucky, it's like a toxic poison for our soul. People don't necessarily see it, but it seeps out because you can't help but make, an eye roll, make a comment. Oh, well, they got divorced. I'm glad. Or, oh, they lost their job. Serves them right. And I know we wouldn't say it, but it's kind of what we're thinking. The only way to make yourself, because that's going to be a natural knee jerk. I get it. I'm human. I get that sometimes, Sometimes I want to run people over and then run them over again. I get it. That's that flesh. But when that should be a cue, when you feel that way, a cue to begin to, now you need to celebrate something. If you feel that much resentment and bitterness that you would almost long for their failure and their lack of success, then that is a cue for you to celebrate it instead. Woo, I'm so glad. I am glad that is happening for you guys. I'm praise God. And I mean, I get it. It's you can say that, and on the inside you're seething. It's but what if you told yourself, but I don't want envy. I don't want envy to get stuck in my heart. That is yucky. It is a problem. It is earthly, unspiritual, and demonic, and I don't want any part of that. And so I'm going to celebrate it, and I'm going to do it to the best of my ability. Praise God for you. I'm so glad that you are finding success. I am glad that you're happy. I am so glad that worked out for you, that you have come into, you were already rich and now you're richer. Yay. I'm so glad. Maybe it takes that. I'm just I know Christians are crazy. We are. But that's the upside down nature of God's kingdom, is it not? But here's the thing. You're not going to do the next one if you're not already doing this one. You want to know what the second one is? I know it gets better. Instead of ignoring God's goodness in our lives, embrace it. You're not going to do that, though, if you're not willing to celebrate others' success, even people who have hurt you, people who have caused you pain. People have done something to you. They've taken something from you. They've won up to you your whole life. They're like, everything's better about their life. They got better kids and better cars and better houses and better wife and better family and better anything, better yard and better, everything. If you're not celebrating that in their life, you'll never get to a place where you're willing to embrace what God has already blessed you with. This is a heart of thankfulness, is it not? It's being willing, like you'll never be thankful for what you do have if you don't recognize it. Have you ever had to stop and do that? Like, because we're all adults here. I bet at some point in your life you've gone, I just need to count my blessings. Or if you have kids, you tell your kids that anyway. It's like, I know you can't have that, but just be thankful you've got this because like there's other kids and who are starving on the other side of the world and blah, blah, blah. Like, be thankful for what you have. That's what we're doing for them. Like, do the same for you. Be thankful. A heart of gratitude and thankfulness for what God has blessed you with, for His goodness in your life. It is a cure for comparison. And it'll take constant attending to and constant practice. And then let me boil it down to this, and then we'll get out of here. Ultimately, does it not boil down? I mean, if we go back to the little parable that Jesus told, He was talking about the kingdom of heaven. And ultimately, what was He talking about? He's talking about the difference between somebody who has lived their entire lives committed and sold out to Jesus, getting no more or less than the person with a deathbed confession, eternity with Jesus. If that bothers you, then we need to revisit who Jesus really was. When Jesus looked at that thief on the cross and He said, you recognize that I'm the Son of God? You're going to be with me today in paradise. He didn't have time to get down on the cross. He didn't get to go to vacation Bible school. He didn't get to memorize any verses. He didn't get to do any good thing. He didn't get to set up and tear down here at Ridge Church. He didn't live it out at all. And yet in the last hour, bases loaded, 2 outs, bottom of the ninth, he gets to knock in a home run. That's not fair. I've lived my whole life serving Jesus. And yet Jesus said, but that's, are you envious of my generosity? The same grace that I am giving to them is the same grace I gave to you. And it's available to you and me. If you've received it, praise God. You've received that gift. But did you know it's available to every single one of us? Doesn't matter what end of life you're on. It doesn't matter how much time you've got left. You're not going to earn your way in. You don't have to, I got to make up for lost time and be a really good person now. Like that doesn't do any good. The gift is the same. And it's the same, it's complete, it's whole, it's full, and it's 100% grace. It's God's generosity to you and me. And I just want to offer that. Would you bow your heads with me? If you haven't received that before, would you receive it? Because I know it's hard for some of us to say, hey, yeah, you can have it. But man, every person who you know, every person within the sound of my voice, those of you who think you don't deserve it, the people who you think don't deserve it, it's available. It's available. It's free. It just has to be received. To receive the same thing that I've had since I was a child. And I want to offer it to you because it's life-changing. Just right where you are, I just want to invite you to pray something like this. If you're at home, if you're in the room, it doesn't matter. A prayer does not save you. A prayer is simply you posturing your heart and saying, God, I need you and I trust you. That's what prayer does. And so I just invite you to pray something like this, to say, Heavenly Father, I know I need you. I want to receive what you are offering. The same gift that you've offered every person in this room. I'm receiving it now. I'm inviting you into my heart to be Lord of my heart. Because you've defeated sin, you've defeated death. And so why would I not want to make you my king? And so I'm offering you everything that I can, everything that I have, and I'm thankful. I'm thankful for it. I'm thankful for Jesus, for his sacrifice. Would you fill me with your Spirit and lead me? I want to make you the Lord of my life. Pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.